Well, can you talk a little bit about the allegation that these municipalities around the country, you talked about in California in particular, that they make against Exxon in terms of the either denying or slow walking the climate crisis? What are they talking about, and why is that relevant to put into a lawsuit?
They accuse Exxon in particular, but other oil companies as well, of having knowledge of the damage that burning fossil fuels was causing, going back really to the 50s and 60s. Exxon has been a particular target of this because thanks to some revelations by researchers of Exxon documents actually stored in Texas, they were able to show that scientists working for Exxon had warned the company, its own scientists had warned the company that burning fossil fuels was contributing to global warming. And this wasn't just one scientist, this was actually different scientists over quite a long period of time. And at one point, Exxon took this seriously enough that it mounted a whole research campaign on one of its tankers, that it set up research equipment to measure whether the climate was changing and whether fossil fuels were contributing to that. Having got that information, the allegation is that they then suppressed it. That actually, once they realized how serious it was, they shut down the investigations and they shut down the research, and they hid the information.
So that's at the heart of this lawsuit. So talk about this Rule 202 and in Texas and how that's being used in defense of Exxon.
So Exxon alleges that there is a conspiracy across the country, but specifically in California, by municipalities and others to essentially change energy policy by suing these companies, and also to bankrupt them or to get those companies themselves to change how they do business, to get them out of the oil business, basically. And what Exxon would like to do, is appealing to the Texas Supreme Court to do, is to use a law known as Rule 202, which essentially allows it to question these officials about this alleged conspiracy before Exxon even actually files a lawsuit against them. It allows them, in essence, allows the company to go on a fishing expedition to drag those officials to Texas, to be questioned under oath, to give depositions, and to see whether there's any information that the company can glean to back up a lawsuit.
I think you used the word intimidation in your story. Why did you use that word?
So the critics of this policy, but also some of those who've been targeted by it, say it's an intimidatory tactic. One of the people I've spoken to about this is the mayor of a small city in Southern California on the Mexican border called Imperial Beach. He's the target of part of this attempt, and he described it as an attempt to intimidate him to get his city to drop the lawsuit against Exxon. Other critics have come forward to say this is part of a broader strategy that the oil industry in general and Exxon in particular has used against its critics. It's gone after scientists in the same way. It's gone after climate researchers in a similar way. Now that it's facing these court cases around what it said, it's trying to do a similar thing using the First Amendment.
And what does Exxon say to you about your story? What was their response?
They haven't responded. I've attempted to get a response and I haven't heard back from them. I have seen in the past that they have made a vigorous defense of this position. They had the backing of the governor, Greg Abbott. He wrote a letter to the Supreme Court in support of this move. And I think Exxon's position is to actually take a fairly belligerent stand against its critics, and to say that this kind of criticism is a conspiracy by extremists, by environmental extremists, by, in some cases, the press.
We've reported that the Governor Abbott's administration, the largest agencies, none of them have any policy about how to deal with the risks that Texans will face from climate change. So the governor really has not even really said the words or addressed this issue at all, climate change. In putting that into context with the fact that he's written a friend of the court brief on behalf of Exxon, what does that's saying about Governor Abbott's position?
Well, it's clear that the governor sees any kind of legal action, or for that matter, divestment, the fact that some companies are taking their money out of fossil fuel companies, as an attack on a key Texas industry, and he's prepared to defend it to the last. I mean, he has entirely characterized any kind of attempt to pressure the oil industry to change its policies as an assault on Texas and on its oil industry. And I think it's interesting that this legal action, this attempt to persuade the Texas Supreme Court to allow Exxon to pursue this, comes in on the back of a law passed last year in Texas that essentially makes it attempts to block moves to boycott oil industry, to divest from it, which is in itself modeled on the anti-Israel boycott laws. So it's not a standalone thing. I think it's part of a broader strategy, and Governor Abbott has very much signed up for that.
Chris McGreal from The Guardian, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.